In a quest to boost cooperation in the international arena, New Delhi is leaving no stone unturned. In that attempt, the government of India is giving importance to the countries that are considered to be third world, just as it gives preference to the countries that are rated as first world. It is not an exaggeration to say that Indian foreign policy is shifting from its immediate neighbors to the larger and expanding circles of the Asia and the rest of the world. To that extent, if we focus specifically on the outer circle concerning Asia and strategic partners, it becomes significant to consider the relations with Indonesia that stretch from the historical, cultural to the economic domain. The best part is that Indonesia too has shown optimism in the relations since always. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Savita Mishra and this is TFI Post. Indonesian Trade Minister Zulkifli Hasan was on a state visit to India from March 13 and 14. During a meeting with Indian Trade and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in New Delhi, he said the PTA can optimize the economic potentials of the two countries. Indonesia is open to negotiating a trade agreement that focuses on the interests of both countries. The statement is an invitation from the Indonesian side to expedite negotiations on the Preferential Trade Agreement, which will prove to be a crucial feature for increasing bilateral trade. As we know, Indonesia is a member of ASEAN and India has already signed a free trade agreement with ASEAN. Under the 2010 ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, India and ASEAN members have agreed to open their respective markets by progressively reducing and eliminating duties on 76.4% of goods and liberalizing tariffs of over 90% of goods. Since it came into effect, the merchandise trade between the two countries has increased significantly with an increase in exports of 23% and imports of 55% over the past decade. In line with that, the individual countries are negotiating their bilateral agreements with India. Indonesia, being one among others, has been negotiating the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement for a decade. In 2011, both countries started the negotiations, so this offer by Indonesian Trade Minister has aroused new hope for resurgence of those negotiations. Indonesia is the world's largest producer of palm oil, but India's prime source of palm oil is Malaysia, which is the second largest producer of palm oil in the world. This is because of the positive effect of the CECA signed between the two countries. However, after the anti-India stance on CAA taken by Malaysian President Mahathir Mohamad, the Indonesian imports are on decline. Given that India is the largest consumer of palm oil, Indonesia is being enticed to increase trade with India. Indonesia now accounts for 47% of the Indian palm oil imports, up from 30% previously. This is further expected to get a boost after Indonesia lifted an export ban on palm oil. So breaking a deal on PTA will obviously include palm oil that will benefit both countries. But it is not only palm oil that both countries should consider for PTA. In a geographical context, both countries are at the crossroads of the Indo-Pacific. India's last territory is just 90 nautical miles away from Indonesia. The significant junction in question is also the location of essential sea lines of communication and narrow passages on water that act as the financial arteries of the area. In a sense, it can be loosely said that India and Indonesia act as de facto gatekeepers of the region, which comprises a trade route for almost 60% of the world's maritime trade. Considering this, it is of crucial importance that India and Indonesia enter into a strategic partnership that is advantageous for the bilateral relations between both countries. As per the current trade trends, Indonesia is India's seventh biggest trading partner with $18.8 billion. It is India's second biggest trading partner in the ASEAN region. This must be noted that projected target for the bilateral trade is $50 billion until 2025. During the meeting, Hasan also elucidated that India is Indonesia's fourth largest trade partner and 21st largest source of foreign investment. Apart from the PTA, Indonesian Trade Minister Hasan also urged his Indian counterpart to reconsider its plan on anti-dumping import duties on viscose staple fiber. VSF is the supporting raw material for the Indian textile industry. It is a cotton-like fiber that is man-made and sustainable in characteristic and is heavily used in apparel, clothing, and handloom manufacturing. After the FTA with ASEAN, VSF was imported to India at zero duty. This increased the competitiveness of the Indian market as the imported VSF was cheaper than the domestic one. So the Directorate General of Trade Remedies recommended the imposition of duties. Previously, the anti-dumping duty was incurred on VSF, which ended in 2021. Indonesia was at $4.15 million, that is 2.146 million kgs in Q3 of 2021, when ADD was withdrawn. The imports jumped to $10.207 million, that is 5.135 million kg in Q4 of 2021. Now the Directorate General of Trade Remedies has again recommended the imposition of ADD on VSF, which has been supported in turn by the Association of Man-Made Fiber in India. And the government of India is now considering putting it up again. This is making Indonesia more uncomfortable, and hence Hassan made another offer to his Indian counterpart. He pitched for investment in India. According to him, one of the Indonesia's biggest VSF producers is interested in investing in India to develop eco-friendly lyocell fiber products of better quality. He stated that the investment is expected to help Indonesia contribute to the manufacturing of high-quality textiles in India. Indian Trade and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal invited Hassan to hold a bilateral meeting between Indonesia and India where 3 ministers from each country will participate. The Indonesian Trade Minister accepted the invitation and named the 3 ministers regarding the meeting. The trade relation between India and Indonesia need to be strengthened as the two countries share a long history of mutual cultural heritage. Sukarno, the most significant Indonesian leader in history, strived for better relations with India. His importance to contemporary and newly independent India can be understood by the fact that he was the first chief guest on the first Republic Day celebration of India on January 26, 1950. Apart from that, Indonesia's proximity to the Indo-Pacific and South China Sea gives it diplomatic importance, and India needs to cooperate with it for an open and free Indo-Pacific rules-based order.